Welcome to my channel, a list that brings your story about the love of a mafia boss. Now let's listen.
The crystal chandelier above table 12 needed cleaning again. I could see the dust settling on its lowest tier as I balanced 3 plates of seared duck breast on my left arm, the heat seeping through the white cloth napkin I'd learned to tuck beneath them. The scent of truffle oil and rosemary filled my nostrils, mixing with the expensive perfumes that seemed to coat the air in Luminaire like a second atmosphere, one I'd never be able to afford to breathe anywhere else. My feet ached. The designer heels they made us wear, black, sleek, stiletto, were a size too small, but I couldn't afford to complain. Not when this job at the most exclusive restaurant in the city was the only thing standing between my daughter and me living in my car. Again. "Excuse me, miss?" A woman's voice, sharp as the knife resting beside her plate. "This wine is corked." I smiled. The smile I'd perfected over 6 months of serving people who earned more in a day than I would in a year. "Of course, ma'am. I'll bring you another bottle right away." The kitchen was a symphony of chaos, all stainless steel and barked orders. Chef Maurice didn't look up as I relayed the table's complaint, just snapped his fingers at someone to grab another bottle from the cellar. I pressed my spine against the cool wall for just a moment, feeling the ache radiate from my lower back up through my shoulders. 3 more hours. Just 3 more hours, and I could go home to Sophie. My phone buzzed in my pocket, another text from the babysitter asking when I'd be back. Mrs. Chen was kind, but she charged by the hour, and every minute past 11 o'clock meant another $1 I didn't have. I typed back a quick response with shaking fingers, then straightened my black apron and pushed back through the double doors. That's when the energy in the dining room shifted. It was subtle at first, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the air pressure drops and you can feel it in your bones. The maitre d', Vincent, who never ruffled, suddenly stood straighter. The sommelier's hand trembled slightly as he poured wine at table 7. Even the low murmur of conversation seemed to quiet, as if the room itself was holding its breath. I followed Vincent's gaze to the entrance. 4 men entered first, not guests, bodyguards. I recognized the type from my childhood in East Brooklyn, though these were a different breed entirely. Tailored black suits that cost more than my car, earpieces barely visible, eyes that swept the room with mechanical precision. They didn't walk. They prowled, checking exits, cataloging faces, hands hovering near concealed weapons I was certain they carried. Then he walked in. I don't know why I noticed the shoes first. Black leather, polished to a mirror shine, custom-made certainly, the kind that whispered wealth with every step against the marble floor. My gaze traveled upward, charcoal gray suit that fit like it had been painted on his body, white shirt open at the collar revealing tan skin, no tie. As if rules about dress codes were for other people, but it was his presence that made my breath catch. Power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself, that simply exists like gravity. He moved through the room as if he owned it, and perhaps he did. Vincent rushed forward, practically bowing, leading him toward the private section we reserved for VIPs. The bodyguards fanned out, 2 following, 2 positioning themselves with sightlines to every entrance. I shouldn't have stared. I knew better. In places like this, you became invisible. A ghost in black and white who delivered food and dissolved into the background. But I couldn't look away. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s perhaps, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. Sharp jaw, straight nose, lips set in a line that suggested he smiled rarely and meant it even less. But it was his eyes that trapped me, dark, almost black, with an intensity that felt physical when they swept across the room, and then they landed on me. For a heartbeat, the world contracted to that single point of contact. His gaze pinned me in place, and I felt suddenly, acutely aware of every flaw, the strand of hair that had escaped my bun, the tiny stain on my apron from earlier, the way my 2 small shoes made me stand awkwardly. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Assessment, calculation. Then he looked away, and I could breathe again. "Table 12 needs their wine." Chef Maurice's voice crackled through my earpiece, snapping me back to reality. I grabbed the new bottle, hands trembling slightly, and wound my way through the tables. but I was hyper-aware now of the private section, of the low murmur of male voices speaking in what sounded like Italian, of the weight of danger that seemed to pulse from that corner of the room. The dinner rush intensified. I moved on autopilot, taking orders, delivering plates, refilling water glasses. But part of my consciousness remained fixed on that private section, on the man who sat at its center like a dark star, around which everything else orbited. It was nearly 10 o'clock when Vincent appeared at my elbow. "Sophia, you need to deliver this to the private room." I stared at the bottle of wine he held. A Chateau Margaux that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, but I don't usually. "Marco called in sick. You're the only one available." His voice dropped. "And Sophia? Be professional. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact. Just deliver the wine and leave. Understood?" The warning in his tone sent ice down my spine. Understood. My hands were slick with sweat as I carried the bottle toward the private section. One of the bodyguards stepped forward, blocking my path. He was massive, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. His eyes were flat, empty of anything resembling warmth. "Wine delivery," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. He nodded curtly and moved aside, but I felt his gaze tracking my every movement as I entered the private room. 6 men sat around a table set for 8. The conversation stopped the moment I entered. The silence was deafening, heavy with unspoken threat. I kept my eyes down, focusing on the bottle in my hands, on the ritual of presenting it. "Chateau Margaux 2010, I murmured, showing the label to the man at the head of the table. Him. Up close, he was even more devastating. His cologne reached me first, something dark and woody with notes of bergamot and smoke. Expensive, intoxicating. I could see the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his fingers, long, elegant, with a single platinum ring on his right hand, drummed once against the table. "Open it." His voice was deep, accented, Italian, definitely, with an edge that made it less a request and more a command. My hands shook as I worked the corkscrew. I could feel all their eyes on me, but his gaze burned the hottest. The cork came free with a soft pop, and I poured a small amount into his glass, the wine catching the light like liquid ruby. He didn't taste it, just kept watching me with those fathomless dark eyes. "What's your name?" Vincent's warning echoed in my head. "Don't speak unless spoken to." "Sophia, sir." I kept my voice neutral, professional, my eyes fixed on the bottle. "Sophia." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "Look at me when I speak to you." It wasn't a request. I lifted my eyes to his, and the impact stole my breath. There was something predatory in his gaze, something that spoke of danger and dark promises, but also curiosity. As if I were a puzzle he was trying to solve. "You're afraid of me." Not a question. A statement. I swallowed hard. "I'm just here to serve your wine, sir." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. "Smart girl. Fear is healthy. It keeps you alive." One of the other men laughed, a cold sound that made my skin crawl. "Since when do you chat with the help, Dante?" "Dante." His name was Dante. "Since she has interesting eyes," he replied, still watching me. "Finish pouring." I moved around the table, filling each glass with hands that somehow remained steady, despite the terror flooding my veins. I could feel the weight of their attention, the way they assessed me like wolves studying prey, but it was Dante's gaze that followed me, that burned into my skin like a brand. As I poured the last glass, my foot caught on something, a briefcase someone had carelessly left beside their chair. I stumbled, and the bottle slipped from my fingers. Time slowed. I watched the bottle fall, watched the wine arc through the air in a perfect crimson stream, watched it splash across expensive suits, across the pristine white tablecloth, across papers that had been spread out on the table's edge. The room went utterly silent. I stood frozen, horror flooding through me as wine dripped from the edge of the table onto the floor. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The papers. They were covered in wine now, the ink running, whatever had been written on them becoming illegible. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, dropping to my knees to try to salvage something, anything. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean—" "Stop!" Dante's voice cut through my panic like a blade. I looked up to find him standing, wine staining his shirt, his jacket. But it was his expression that terrified me. Completely blank, emotionless, as if he were looking at something already dead. He moved closer, his shoes stopping inches from where I knelt. I could smell the wine mixing with his cologne, could see the tension in his body, the coiled violence barely contained. "Do you know what those papers were?" His voice was soft, deadly. I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. They were contracts, deals that took months to arrange, worth more than you'll make in 10 lifetimes. He crouched down, bringing his face level with mine. "And you just destroyed them. I'll pay for them," I blurted out, even knowing it was impossible. "I'll work extra shifts, You'll pay?" His laugh was bitter. "With what? Your tips?" One of the bodyguards appeared at his shoulder. "Boss, what do you want us to—" Dante held up one hand, silencing him. His eyes never left mine. "Stand up." I did, my legs shaking so badly I could barely support my weight. The room spun around me. This was it. I was going to lose my job. Worse, these were clearly not men who took losses lightly. Dante circled me slowly, like a predator assessing its prey. "You seem like a smart woman, Sophia. Hardworking. Probably supporting someone. A boyfriend? Husband. A daughter," I whispered. "I have a 5-year-old daughter." Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "Then you understand how important it is to be able to provide for your family. To keep them safe." He stopped directly in front of me. "Those documents you ruined? They represented safety for my family, protection, revenue." My throat was too tight to speak. He reached into his jacket. I flinched, unable to help myself, and pulled out a phone. Tapped the screen several times, then held it up to show me. It was a photograph of a helicopter. Sleek, black, expensive looking. "Can you fly this?" he asked. I blinked, confusion cutting through my terror. "What?" Simple question. "Can you fly a helicopter?" Yes. I have a pilot's license. I stopped, remembering Vincent's warning about speaking too much. But Dante's eyes had lit with something new, interest. Sharp and focused. "You used to what?" "I used to fly helicopters for medical evacuations before Sophie's father disappeared. Before I lost everything. Before my world collapsed." The silence stretched out, heavy with expectation. Dante studied me as if he could read every secret written on my soul. Then he smiled. A real smile this time, though it held no warmth. "Then we have a deal, Sophia." He moved closer, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Fly this helicopter for me, and I'll consider your debt paid. Refuse and—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. "When?" The word escaped before I could stop it. "Now." "Now?" "But my daughter, Mrs. Chen, my shift." 1,000 objections crowded my throat. "Now," he repeated, his voice soft but implacable. "Unless you'd prefer to discuss alternative payment methods, I assure you, they're far less pleasant." One of the other men stood, pulling out his phone. "Dante, we need to move. The shipment arrives in 90 minutes. Shipment, deals, bodyguards. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. I'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple dinner service. Dante extended his hand to me. Elegant fingers, scarred knuckles, that platinum ring catching the light. "Come with me, Sophia. Fly this helicopter, and maybe, if you're lucky, you'll survive the night." I stared at his hand, at the choice that wasn't really a choice. Behind me, Vincent appeared in the doorway, his face pale. He caught my eye and shook his head slightly. A warning. Or maybe a goodbye. Sophie's face flashed through my mind. Her gap-toothed smile, her unruly curls, the way she hugged my neck so tight when I came home from work. She needed me. She was waiting for me. But these men, this man, wouldn't let me simply walk away. So I did the only thing I could do. I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, warm, strong, possessive, and he pulled me to my feet. "Smart girl," he murmured. I knew those eyes held secrets. He didn't let go of my hand as he led me toward the exit, his bodyguards forming a protective circle around us. The other diners watched with wide eyes as we passed, as if witnessing something they knew they should forget as quickly as possible. Outside, the night air hit my face like a slap. 3 black SUVs waited at the curb, engines running, windows tinted so dark they looked like portals to nowhere. Dante opened the back door of the middle vehicle and gestured for me to enter. I climbed inside, my heart hammering, my mind racing through every possible escape route and finding none. He slid in beside me, close enough that our thighs touched. The door slammed shut, and the vehicle pulled into traffic with smooth precision. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dante pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then looked at me. In the dim light from the screen, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. "To see if you're as good as you claim to be," he said, "and to discover whether you're brave or just foolish." The SUV accelerated, and I watched the familiar streets of my city blur past the window, carrying me toward a future I couldn't begin to imagine. Toward danger, toward secrets, toward a man whose dark eyes held promises of both destruction and something terrifyingly like desire. The SUV moved through the city like a shark through dark water, smooth, predatory, unstoppable. I sat rigidly beside Dante, hyper-aware of every point where our bodies almost touched, of the heat that seemed to radiate from him despite the air conditioning that hummed softly through the vehicle. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mrs. Chen, probably. Or worse, the restaurant, wondering where I'd disappeared to. I reached for it instinctively, but Dante's hand shot out, catching my wrist with surprising gentleness. "No calls," he said quietly. "Not until this is done. My daughter... We'll be fine for a few hours." His thumb pressed against my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. "Who watches her?" "A neighbor. Mrs. Chen. She'll be worried if I don't..." He released my wrist and pulled out his own phone, typed something quickly. "Name and address." I stared at him. "Why?" "Because I'm going to have someone deliver a message that you're working late, along with enough money to cover her time and her silence." He looked at me expectantly. "Unless you'd prefer she call the police looking for you?" The casual way he said it, the implication that police involvement would be bad for both of us, sent ice down my spine. But he was right. Mrs. Chen would panic if I didn't show up. She might call someone, and something told me that would end badly for everyone involved. I gave him the information, watching as he texted it to someone. Within seconds, a response came back. He showed me the screen briefly, a simple thumbs-up emoji. "Done," he said. "She'll have the message within 20 minutes. "How much money?" "Enough." He slipped the phone back into his pocket. "You ask a lot of questions for someone in your position." "My position being what, exactly? Kidnapped? Coerced?" The man in the passenger seat, one of the bodyguards from the restaurant, turned slightly. "You want I should explain to her how to speak respectfully, boss?" "No, Marco." Dante's voice held a note of amusement. "I appreciate honesty. It's rare in my world." He shifted to face me more fully. "You're not kidnapped, Sophia. You're fulfilling an obligation. You destroyed something valuable. Now you're making restitution. That's how business works." "This isn't business. This is..." I stopped, suddenly aware that I was arguing with a man who clearly held my life in his hands. "This is what?" He leaned closer, and I could smell his cologne again, that intoxicating mix of smoke and bergamot that seemed to wrap around my senses. "Say it." "Illegal," I whispered. He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face completely. For a moment, he looked younger, almost approachable. Then the moment passed, and the dangerous mask slid back into place. "Everything I do exists in shades of gray, Sophia. Legal, illegal. These are concepts for people who have the luxury of choice." His hand moved to my face, fingers grazing my cheek with shocking gentleness. You, for example. You have a helicopter license, but you're working as a waitress. Why? I pulled back from his touch, pressing myself against the door. That's none of your business. Everything about you became my business the moment you spilled wine on $10 million worth of contracts. His voice hardened. So answer the question. Why isn't a licensed pilot flying? The SUV turned onto a highway, picking up speed. Through the windshield, I could see the other two vehicles keeping pace, one ahead, one behind. A convoy. Protected. Planned. I lost my certification, I said finally. Temporarily. There was an incident. A medical emergency during a flight. The patient died. There was an investigation. They found I'd been working triple shifts, that I was exhausted. They suspended my license for 6 months. When do you get it back? 2 weeks ago. His eyebrows rose. So you're fully certified, current, legal. Yes, but I haven't flown since... You remember how? I thought of the countless hours in the cockpit. The way my hands had known every control as intimately as my own heartbeat. The freedom of lifting off the ground, of seeing the world spread out below like a map of infinite possibilities. Yes, I admitted. I remember. Good. He settled back in his seat, looking satisfied. Then tonight should be interesting. We drove for another 30 minutes, leaving the city behind. The landscape changed from buildings to industrial parks to empty stretches of darkness punctuated by distant lights. I tried to memorize the route, the turns, anything that might help me later, but the windows were so heavily tinted that I could barely make out landmarks. Finally, we turned onto a narrow road that led to what looked like an abandoned airfield. Weeds grew through cracks in the concrete. Old hangars stood like skeletal giants against the night sky. But as we drove closer, I could see light spilling from one of the structures, and the distinctive silhouette of a helicopter parked on a cleared section of tarmac. The SUV stopped, and Marco opened the door. Let's move. We're behind schedule. Dante climbed out and extended his hand to me again. I ignored it this time, stepping out on my own, my heels clicking against the concrete. The night air was cooler here, carrying the scent of fuel and rust and something else. Marijuana, maybe, or chemicals I couldn't identify. The helicopter was exactly like the photo he'd shown me. Sleek, black, expensive. An Airbus H-125 if I wasn't mistaken. Single engine, light utility, capable of carrying up to 6 passengers. My fingers itched to touch it, to run pre-flight checks, to feel the controls respond to my hands again. Beautiful, isn't she? Dante stood beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. I acquired her 6 months ago, but my usual pilot is unavailable tonight. Unavailable or dead. The words slipped out before I could stop them. He smiled. That cold, dangerous smile. Does it matter? 3 more men emerged from the hangar, not bodyguards, but workers of some kind. They carried large duffel bags which they loaded into the helicopter's cargo area with practiced efficiency. I tried not to think about what might be in those bags. Drugs, money, weapons. Nothing good. Your job is simple, Dante said, his hand finding the small of my back, guiding me toward the helicopter. You fly us to a specific location. You wait while we conduct our business. You fly us back. That's all. Where? You'll receive coordinates once we're airborne. He opened the pilot's door, gesturing for me to climb in. I'm not a fool, Sophia. I don't give away my destinations until I'm certain of my pilot's cooperation. I looked at the cockpit, at the controls I'd dreamed about for months, at the freedom they represented. Then I looked at Dante, at the hard line of his jaw, at the gun I could now see holstered under his jacket. And if I refuse, then you'll discover exactly how unpleasant my alternative payment methods can be. He moved closer, crowding me against the helicopter's frame. But you won't refuse, because you're a mother, and mothers do whatever necessary to survive, to get home to their children. The truth of his words burned through me. He'd read me perfectly, seen past the defiant words to the terror underneath, the desperate need to make it through this night, to see Sophie again, to hold her, and promise that everything would be okay. Even if it was a lie. I climbed into the pilot's seat. The cockpit closed around me like an old lover's embrace. My hands found the controls automatically. Collective, cyclic, pedals. Everything was exactly where it should be. The instrument panel glowed to life as Dante climbed into the co-pilot seat beside me, followed by Marco and 2 other men in the back. "Pre-flight check," I said, my voice steadier now. This at least I knew how to do. This was familiar ground. I ran through the sequence methodically, checking fuel, instruments, warning lights. Everything looked good. Too good, actually. This helicopter had been maintained to perfection, probably better than the medical choppers I'd flown. "Satisfied?" Dante asked, watching me with those intense dark eyes. "Yes." I reached for the starter. "Coordinates?" He pulled out his phone, typed briefly, and my navigation system pinged. A location appeared, 40 miles northeast, in what looked like the middle of nowhere, an empty field, or maybe private property. Nothing that suggested legitimate business. "There's a clearing," he explained. "Natural cover from the tree line. You'll land, we'll be gone approximately 20 minutes, then we fly back. Simple." Nothing about this was simple, but I engaged the engine anyway. The familiar whine filled my ears, building to a roar as the rotors began to spin. The helicopter shuddered, coming to life beneath my hands like a wild animal recognizing its master. I'd forgotten how much I loved this feeling. "Clear for takeoff," Marco said into his radio, and I realized there were people watching, coordinating. This was a professional operation. I pulled up on the collective, eased the cyclic forward, and we lifted smoothly into the night sky. The ground fell away beneath us, and for a moment, just one perfect moment, I forgot about the danger, about the men with guns sitting behind me, about the illegal cargo and the destroyed contracts. For one moment, I was free again, suspended between earth and stars, with nothing but sky and possibility stretching out in every direction. "You're good at this," Dante observed, his voice crackling through the headset we both wore. "I know," I replied simply. He laughed. "Confidence. I like that." We flew in silence for a while, following the coordinates northeast. Below us, the city's lights gave way to suburbs, then rural darkness broken only by occasional farmhouses and long stretches of empty highway. The helicopter responded beautifully to every adjustment, every minor correction. Whoever maintained this machine knew what they were doing. "You said there was an incident," Dante said suddenly. "A patient died. I didn't want to talk about this, didn't want to remember that night. The alarms, the desperate rush, the way I'd fought to keep my eyes open, to focus, to make it to the hospital in time." "Yes." "What happened?" "I told you. I was exhausted. I'd been working triple shifts for weeks, trying to make enough money to..." I stopped, swallowing hard. "It doesn't matter. I made a mistake. Someone died, that's all." "That's not all." His voice was quiet but insistent. "Tell me." Maybe it was the darkness, the intimacy of the cockpit, the surreal quality of flying a Mafia helicopter through the night sky. Maybe I was just tired of carrying the weight alone. Whatever the reason, I found myself talking. "Sophie's father left when she was 2, I said, keeping my eyes on the instruments. "He worked for someone. I never knew who exactly. He was always vague about his job. Good money, he said. Money for our future. Then one day he came home terrified. Said he'd made a mistake, that people were coming for him, that we all needed to disappear. I adjusted our heading slightly, compensating for wind. He left that night, told me to pack a bag, take Sophie and run. But I didn't believe him. I thought he was being paranoid or dramatic or, I don't know. I didn't run, and he never came back. Did they find him? I don't know. He just vanished, and suddenly all his accounts were frozen. Our savings, gone. I found out he'd been using my name for things. Loans, credit cards. He destroyed my credit, left me with nothing but debt and a toddler to feed. The memory still stung, even 3 years later. So I worked. Every shift I could get. Medical transport paid well, but it wasn't enough. I picked up extra work, slept 4 hours a night if I was lucky. And that night, the night of the incident, I'd been awake for 36 hours straight. I could see it still. The patient coding, the machine's protests, my vision swimming with exhaustion. I misjudged the landing, just by a few feet, but it was enough. The delay meant he didn't get to surgery in time. He died on the operating table, and they blamed you. They were right to blame me. I was responsible. I should have called in sick, should have said no to the extra shift. But I needed the money, and someone needed a pilot, and I thought I could handle it. Silence filled the cockpit. I risked a glance at Dante and found him watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Not pity. I would have hated pity. Something else. Understanding, maybe. Sophie's father, he said slowly. What was his name? Marcus. Marcus Delgado. Why? The change in Dante's expression was subtle but unmistakable. His jaw tightened. His eyes went cold, and his hand moved instinctively toward his weapon. Delgado, he repeated. Marcus Delgado. You knew him? Knew him? His laugh was bitter. Yes, Sophia. I knew Marcus Delgado very well. He worked for my organization, and he didn't just make a mistake. He stole from me. $3 million. Then he disappeared. The helicopter dipped as my hands jerked on the controls. I steadied us quickly, my mind reeling. What? $3 million in cash that was supposed to be delivered to my partners. Your Marcus took it and ran. Dante's voice was ice. I spent 6 months looking for him. I found nothing. He's either dead, or he's very good at hiding. My stomach twisted. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. I believe you. He studied me carefully. You're too honest to be a good liar. Too transparent. If you'd known, you would have run too. Is that why? My throat closed. Is that why you're being so, when I spilled the wine, you could have just had me fired, or worse. But instead I found out Marcus Delgado's woman can fly helicopters. His smile was sharp as a knife. The universe has a sense of humor, doesn't it? The clearing appeared ahead, exactly as promised, a natural opening surrounded by dense trees. I focused on the landing, pushing away the implications of what I'd just learned. Steady approach, watch for obstacles, gentle descent. We touched down perfectly, the skids settling onto grass with barely a bump. Well done, Dante said, unbuckling his harness. Wait here. Don't touch the radio. Don't leave the helicopter. Don't do anything stupid. And if I do? He leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. Then I'll assume you knew about Marcus's theft all along, and I'll treat you accordingly. The threat was clear. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He and his men disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone in the helicopter with only the instrument lights and my racing thoughts for company. Marcus had worked for Dante, had stolen from him, and I, completely unknowingly, had been living on the edges of this man's world for 3 years, trying to survive the wreckage Marcus had left behind. The universe didn't have a sense of humor. It had a cruel sense of irony. 15 minutes passed, 20. I watched the tree line, looking for movement, for any sign of what they were doing out there. But the night revealed nothing. Then I heard it. Gunshots. Sharp cracks that split the silence, followed by shouts. Men running, more gunfire. My hands flew to the controls instinctively. Every nerve screamed at me to lift off, to leave, to escape while I had the chance. But Sophie's face flashed through my mind. If I left, Dante would come for me. For us. He knew where we lived, knew Mrs. Chen, knew everything. I was trapped as surely as if I were locked in a cage. The men burst from the tree line, Dante in the lead, Marco and the others flanking him. They ran full speed toward the helicopter, and I could see blood on Marco's shoulder, could see the fury on Dante's face. Go, he shouted as they piled into the helicopter. Go now! I didn't hesitate. I pulled up hard, the helicopter leaping into the sky just as more gunfire erupted from the trees. Something pinged off the tail rotor. A bullet, missing us by inches. West! Dante barked. Fly west, not back to the airfield. I banked hard, pushing the helicopter to its limits. Below us, I could see muzzle flashes, could see vehicles racing through the forest. Someone had been waiting. An ambush. Who were they? I asked, my voice shaking despite my efforts to control it. People who should have known better than to fuck with me. Dante was on his phone, barking orders in rapid Italian. Marco, how bad? Flesh wound, boss. I'll live. We flew west for 10 minutes, then Dante gave me new coordinates. A different location, farther from the city. I followed them without question, my hand steady on the controls even as my mind spun. This was my life now. This was the price of a spilled bottle of wine and a father's betrayal. This was the cage I'd flown myself into. And the man beside me, dangerous, powerful, connected to the worst moment of my past, held the only key. The new coordinates led us to what looked like an industrial complex. Warehouses and shipping containers arranged in neat rows, lit by harsh fluorescent lights that carved geometric shadows into the night. I brought the helicopter down in a designated landing zone, a painted circle on concrete that suggested this wasn't the first time someone had landed here. The moment the skids touched ground, men appeared from seemingly nowhere. Not rushing, but moving with purpose, taking the duffel bags, speaking in low voices to Dante's crew, their eyes constantly scanning the perimeter. "Out," Dante said, already unbuckling his harness. I climbed out on shaking legs, my heels clicking against concrete that still held the day's heat. The air smelled of diesel fuel and salt water. We were near the docks, I realized, somewhere in the industrial port area where legitimate business ended and shadow economies thrived. Dante's hand found my elbow, steadying me, or claiming me. I wasn't sure which. "Marco, get that shoulder cleaned up," he ordered. "Luca, I want a full report on what the fuck happened back there in 10 minutes. Everyone else, standard lockdown protocol." The men dispersed efficiently, leaving us standing beside the helicopter. Dante's jaw was tight, his body radiating barely contained fury. Blood spattered his white shirt. Marco's blood, I hoped, not his own. "You did well tonight," he said finally, his voice carrying an edge I couldn't identify. That was combat flying, not easy for someone who's been grounded for months. "I told you I remembered how. Remembering and executing under fire are different things." His dark eyes swept over me, assessing. "You're full of surprises, Sofia Delgado." The name hit me like a slap. I don't use his name. I never married him. It's just Sofia Torres. Torres. He tested the name. Better. Cleaner. Though it doesn't erase what he did. "I had nothing to do with—" "I know." He cut me off, his hand moving to my face, tilting my chin up so I had to meet his eyes. "If I thought you did, you wouldn't have made it off the ground tonight. But you're tied to him, whether you want to be or not. His daughter carries his blood, you carry his debts. That's not fair." "Fair?" His laugh was harsh. "Nothing about this world is fair, Sofia. Fair is a fantasy for people who've never had to fight for survival." His thumb traced my cheekbone with surprising gentleness. "But you know that already, don't you? You've been fighting since he left, working yourself to exhaustion. Raising his child alone, trying to stay afloat in a world designed to drown people like you." The accuracy of his words made my chest tight. "What do you want from me?" "Want?" He considered this, his eyes never leaving mine. "I want many things. To find Marcus, and make him pay for his betrayal. To understand how someone so careful could leave behind someone so interesting. To know if you taste as sweet as you look when you're afraid." Heat flooded my cheeks. "I'm not afraid of you. Liar." But he smiled as he said it. "You're terrified. I can feel your pulse racing under my fingers. Can see it in how you hold yourself. Ready to run even though you know there's nowhere to go." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear. "But that's what makes you fascinating. You're afraid, but you don't break. You flew that helicopter like you were born to it. Didn't hesitate when the bullets started flying. Most people would have panicked. I had motivation. You threatened my daughter." "No." His voice went hard. "I would never hurt a child. That's not how I operate. But I let you believe I might, because fear is a useful tool, and you needed motivation to cooperate." I pulled back, anger cutting through the fear. "So this was all manipulation? Testing me?" "Everything is a test, Sofia. Every moment. Every choice. How you react tells me who you are, what you're worth." He released me, stepping back. "And you've proven you're worth considerably more than a ruined bottle of wine." A man approached. "Luca," I assumed, holding a tablet. "Boss," Report's ready. Dante took the tablet, his expression darkening as he scrolled through whatever information it contained. Rossi's crew. I should have known that bastard couldn't resist making a move. You want me to send a message? Not yet. First, I want to know how they knew about the pickup. Dante's fingers tightened on the tablet. We have a leak, someone close. I'll start pulling phone records, surveillance, do it quietly. I don't want whoever it is to know we're looking. He handed the tablet back. And Luca? Get me everything on Marcus Delgado. Everything. Where he is, what he's been doing, every place he might have hidden my money. Luca's eyes flicked to me, then back to Dante. All of it, boss? All of it. When Luca left, I found my voice. You think Marcus is still alive? Someone is using his accounts. Small transactions, carefully spaced. Ghost money. Dante pulled out his phone, showed me a series of numbers and dates. He's smart enough to stay hidden, but not smart enough to completely disappear. He's out there somewhere, living on what he stole from me, the numbers blurred before my eyes. While I'd been working myself to exhaustion, barely surviving, Marcus had been alive, had been spending stolen money, had abandoned Sophie and me to save himself. The betrayal felt fresh all over again. I hope you find him, I said quietly. I hope you make him pay for everything he did. Dante studied me with those penetrating dark eyes. Careful what you wish for, Sophia. My version of payment isn't gentle. I don't care. He left us with nothing. Less than nothing. Debt, danger, destroyed credit. He left his daughter without a father, so whatever you do to him, I met his gaze steadily. He deserves it. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. You're harder than you look. I'm a mother. We do what's necessary. Yes. He moved closer again, crowding into my space, his presence overwhelming. I would do anything for my family. Anything. No price too high. No line I wouldn't cross. His hand found my waist, pulling me against him. Tell me, Sophia, how far would you go to protect Sophie? What lines would you cross? My hands pressed against his chest, hard muscle beneath expensive fabric, his heart beating steady and strong. Anything. I'd do anything. Even work for me? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. What? You need money. I need a pilot I can trust, or at least a pilot whose motivations I understand completely. His hands tightened on my waist. You fly for me regularly. I pay you 10 times what you made at that restaurant. You get your life back. Sophie gets everything she needs. And I get someone who owes me their loyalty. That's not loyalty. That's coercion. Call it what you want. But it's also survival. Your survival. He released me, stepping back. Or you can go back to serving wine to people who don't see you, back to shoes that don't fit and shifts that destroy you, back to wondering if you'll make rent this month. I wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him to go to hell, that I'd find another way, but the truth was brutal and inescapable. There was no other way. Not really. Not for someone like me, with my history and my debts and my desperate need to provide for my daughter. If I say yes, I said slowly, I want guarantees. No drugs around Sophie. No danger coming to my home. No. Done. He cut me off. Your daughter stays clean from this world. Your home stays protected. You work, you get paid, you go home to her. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. No, he agreed, but it's better than the alternative, better than waiting tables and hoping nobody notices how badly you're drowning. He was right. God help me. He was right. One more thing, I said. When you find Marcus, I want to be there. I want to see his face when he realizes what he destroyed. Dante's smile was sharp and dangerous. Deal. He extended his hand. Elegant fingers, scarred knuckles, that platinum ring catching the harsh fluorescent light. I took it. His grip was firm, possessive, sealing a bargain that would tie me to him in ways I couldn't yet imagine, sealing my fate with a handshake and a promise of revenge against the man who'd broken me. Welcome to the family, Sophia, Dante murmured, his voice carrying notes of satisfaction and something darker, something that made my skin heat despite the cool night air. I have a feeling this will be a very interesting partnership. He pulled me closer, his lips brushing my ear. Now let me take you home. To your daughter. To your life. And tomorrow, we'll discuss the details of your new position. A black SUV pulled up, door already open, waiting. I climbed inside, Dante sliding in beside me, his presence filling the space like smoke. As we drove through the night, back toward the city, and Sophie and everything I'd been fighting to protect, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just traded one cage for another. A gilded cage, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. And the man beside me, dangerous, powerful, connected to my past in ways I was only beginning to understand, held every key. The SUV pulled up to my apartment building 40 minutes later, a worn 3-story walk-up in a neighborhood that had seen better decades. The contrast between Dante's world and mine couldn't have been starker. Here, graffiti-decorated crumbling brick walls, streetlights flickered uncertainly, and the smell of garbage mixed with the distant scent of someone's late-night cooking. Dante's expression didn't change as he surveyed my building, but I felt the judgment anyway. This was poverty. Real, grinding poverty that no amount of wine-stained contracts could truly understand. "Wait here," he told Marco, then turned to me. "I'll walk you up." "That's not necessary." It wasn't a request. He opened his door, came around to mine, and extended his hand. I ignored it, climbing out on my own. My feet screamed in protest. Those 2 small heels had been torture for hours now. I wanted nothing more than to kick them off, to collapse into bed, to pretend this entire night had been some fever dream. But Dante's hand found the small of my back again, proprietary and warm, guiding me toward the building's entrance. Mrs. Chen's apartment was on the 1st floor. Light spilled from under her door, and I could hear the television, some late-night talk show she always watched. I knocked softly, not wanting to wake Sophie if she'd already fallen asleep on Mrs. Chen's couch like she usually did. The door opened immediately. Mrs. Chen's weathered face appeared, her expression cycling from relief to confusion as she registered Dante standing behind me. Her eyes widened, taking in his expensive suit, his commanding presence, the danger that seemed to radiate from him like heat. "Sophia," she said carefully in accented English. "Your friend came earlier with the message and the money. I'm sorry I'm so late, Mrs. Chen. Work ran longer than expected." "Yes, I see." Her gaze flicked to Dante again, questions clearly burning behind her eyes. But Mrs. Chen was old school. She understood when not to ask. "Sophie is sleeping. I carry her upstairs for you? I'll get her." I moved past Mrs. Chen into the small, cramped apartment that smelled of jasmine tea and mothballs. Sophie was curled on the worn couch, her dark curls spread across a pillow, one small hand clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since birth. My heart clenched. She was so small, so innocent, so completely unaware of the world I'd just stepped into, the world that now surrounded us whether I wanted it to or not. I gathered her carefully into my arms. She mumbled something in her sleep, burrowing against my shoulder. Her warm weight, familiar and precious. This was why I'd made every choice tonight. This was worth any price. When I turned, Dante was standing in the doorway, watching us. Something flickered across his face. Longing, maybe, or pain. It was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen," I said quietly. "I'll see you tomorrow?" Yes, you rest now." She pressed something into my hand, the money Dante's man had brought, I realized. Far more than I owed her. Too much. "You take back. Keep it. Please. You've been so good to us." She hesitated, then nodded, understanding that pride sometimes had to bend to necessity. Dante waited in the hallway while I maneuvered Sophie's weight and climbed the 2 flights to our apartment. He moved behind me silently, a dark presence that made the stairwell feel smaller, more confined. Our apartment was tiny, a 1-bedroom that I'd tried to make cheerful with second-hand furniture and cheap curtains. Sophie's drawings covered the refrigerator, her toys were scattered across the living room floor, and dirty dishes sat in the sink because I hadn't had time to wash them before my shift. I laid Sophie in her bed, really just a mattress on the floor in the bedroom we shared, and pulled her blanket over her small body. She sighed in her sleep, turning onto her side, her rabbit tucked under her chin. When I came back to the living room, Dante was standing by the window, looking out at the street below. He seemed out of place here, like a panther in a pet store, too big, too dangerous, too otherworldly for this small space that held my entire life. She looks like him, he said without turning. Marcus. Same eyes, same chin. She has my hair. I didn't know why that felt important to say. And my stubbornness. Does she ask about her father? Sometimes. I tell her he had to go away, that he loved her but couldn't stay. The lies tasted bitter. I don't tell her he abandoned us, that he was a thief and a coward. She'll learn that soon enough when she's older. Dante turned to face me, his expression unreadable. You're protecting her. From the truth. From him. From everything. That's what mothers do. My mother did the same. His voice went distant. Lied to protect me from my father's world. Told me he was a businessman, that the men with guns were just security. That the blood on his shirts was from accidents. He moved closer. Then I turned 12, and I watched him kill a man, right in front of me. No more lies after that. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me strong. Made me understand how this world really works. Weakness gets you killed. Sentiment gets you betrayed. Power is the only thing that matters. His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my lower lip. But you already know that, don't you? Marcus taught you that lesson the hard way. I don't want Sophie to learn it that way. Then work for me. Let me pay you enough that she never has to struggle. Never has to watch you destroy yourself trying to survive. Give her the childhood you didn't have. His words were seductive, dangerous. They painted a picture of security I hadn't felt in years, but they also bound me tighter to him. To his world. To choices I couldn't take back. What exactly would this job entail? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Flights, mostly at night. Sometimes cargo, sometimes passengers. You don't ask questions about what or who. You fly where I tell you, when I tell you. You keep your mouth shut about everything you see. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me against him. And you belong to me. Not romantically, not unless you want that, but professionally, completely. You don't fly for anyone else. You don't talk to anyone else about your work. You're mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent heat through my body, a response I didn't want to examine too closely. And if I want out eventually, then we renegotiate. I'm not a prison warden, Sophia. But leaving requires notice, requires ensuring you won't become a liability. His eyes searched mine. I protect my people, but I also destroy those who betray me. Remember that. It was both promise and threat, wrapped together so tightly I couldn't separate one from the other. How much? I asked. Specifically, how much would you pay me? He named a figure that made my knees weak. Monthly. That amount monthly. It was more than I'd made in 6 months at the restaurant. Enough to move to a better apartment, to give Sophie everything she needed, to finally breathe. I couldn't finish the sentence. That's what loyalty costs, what discretion is worth. He released me, stepping back. Think about it tonight. Tomorrow I'll send a car for you at noon. We'll discuss details, draw up a contract, make this official. But Sophia? His voice went hard. Once you sign, you're committed. There's no changing your mind. No backing out because you get scared or develop a conscience. Understand? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He moved to the door, then paused, looking back at me. Standing there in my cheap apartment with my sleeping daughter in the next room, and desperation written all over my face. One more thing, he said softly. Marcus took something from me, $3 million. If you help me find him, if you give me information that leads to his capture, I'll give you 10%, $300,000, enough to truly start over. The number was staggering, life-changing. But it meant betraying Sophie's father. Helping the man who would certainly kill him. He deserves what's coming to him, Dante continued, reading my hesitation correctly. He stole from me, lied to you, abandoned his child. Justice, Sophia, not revenge. Justice. He left before I could respond, the door clicking shut behind him with a finality that echoed through my small apartment. I stood there for a long time, listening to Sophie's soft breathing from the bedroom, feeling the weight of choices pressing down on me like physical things. Tomorrow, I would either sign a contract with the devil or go back to drowning slowly in poverty and exhaustion. Tomorrow, I would either embrace this new gilded cage or condemn Sophie and myself to continue struggling in the old one. But tonight I just crawled into bed beside my daughter, held her small, warm body close, and let myself cry silently into the darkness. For Marcus's betrayal, for the life I'd lost, for the woman I'd been before tonight, and for the woman I was about to become. The black SUV arrived at exactly noon, as promised. I'd spent the morning in a fog, getting Sophie ready for kindergarten, walking her to the bus stop, watching her climb aboard with her oversized backpack and gap-toothed smile. She'd asked why I wasn't wearing my work uniform, and I'd told her I had a meeting, a new job opportunity, not quite a lie, but not the truth either. I'd dressed carefully, the only professional outfit I owned, a navy dress I'd bought secondhand for job interviews that never went anywhere. My hair was pulled back, minimal makeup, sensible flats instead of heels. I wanted to look competent, in control, even though I felt anything but. Marco was driving again, his shoulder bandaged but his expression stoic. He didn't speak as I climbed into the back seat, just pulled into traffic with practiced efficiency. We drove to a part of the city I rarely visited, where old money lived in renovated brownstones and new money built glass towers that scraped the sky. The SUV pulled up to one such tower, all gleaming steel and tinted windows that reflected the clouds. "Penthouse," Marco said, his first words to me. "He's expecting you." The elevator required a keycard to access the top floor. Marco swiped his, pressed the button marked PH, and stepped back as the doors closed. I watched the numbers climb, 20 floors, 30, 40, my stomach dropping with each ascending level. The doors opened directly into an apartment that stole my breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, offering a view that probably cost more per month than I'd earned in a year. The space was decorated in shades of black, white, and gray. Modern, minimalist, expensive. Everything from the leather furniture to the abstract art on the walls screamed wealth and power. Dante stood by the windows, backlit by afternoon sun, talking on his phone in rapid Italian. He was dressed more casually than last night. Black slacks, white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no jacket, but he looked no less dangerous. If anything, the casual attire made him seem more predatory, like a wolf temporarily pretending to be domesticated. He ended his call as I stepped out of the elevator, his dark eyes tracking my movement across the polished concrete floor. "Sophia. Punctual. I appreciate that." He gestured to a seating area. "Coffee? Water? Water, please." He moved to a bar area, returning with 2 glasses of water, ice clinking softly. His fingers brushed mine as he handed me the glass. Intentional, I thought. Everything this man did was intentional. "Did you sleep?" he asked, settling into the chair across from me. "Some." A lie. I'd barely slept at all, my mind racing through scenarios, consequences, escape routes that didn't exist. "But you came anyway. That tells me what I need to know." He pulled a folder from the side table, opened it. "This is your contract. Standard employment agreement, salary as discussed, paid monthly into an account we'll set up for you. Benefits included health insurance, life insurance, even a retirement plan." I almost laughed at that last part. Retirement plan. As if I'd survive long enough to retire from this world. There are clauses about confidentiality, about loyalty, about what happens if you breach either. He slid the contract across to me. "Read it carefully. Take your time. This is not a decision to make lightly." I read through the pages slowly, my legal knowledge limited but enough to understand the basics. The salary was exactly as promised. The benefits were generous, far better than anything I'd had before. But the penalty clauses made my blood run cold. Breach of contract resulted in immediate termination, of employment, and I suspected, possibly of life. "I need to ask something," I said, looking up from the pages. "Last night, you said you'd never hurt a child. that you have lines you won't cross. But this world, your world, it's built on violence, on hurting people. How do I know Sophie will really be safe? Dante's expression softened slightly, the hard edges easing. Come with me. He led me through the apartment to a room I hadn't noticed, a bedroom decorated in soft pinks and purples, with a canopy bed and shelves full of toys. A little girl's room, clearly loved and recently used. My niece, Isabella, he explained. She's 7. Stays with me sometimes when my sister needs help. This world I live in, it exists so she can be safe. So she can go to good schools, have nice things, never know hunger or fear. I would burn this entire city to the ground before I'd let anything happen to her. He turned to face me fully. You think I'm a monster, and maybe I am. But monsters protect what's theirs. Sophie is yours, which makes her under my protection now. Anyone who touches her answers to me. That includes my own people. That includes rival organizations. That includes Marcus, if he ever surfaces. No one touches her. Ever. The fierceness in his voice, the absolute conviction. It was the first thing that made me truly believe him. Okay, I whispered. We returned to the living room. I picked up the pen he'd left beside the contract, my hand hovering over the signature line. Once you sign, Dante said quietly, everything changes. You can't go back to who you were before. You'll have money, security, protection. But you'll also have secrets. Blood on your hands, even if you never pull a trigger. Can you live with that? I thought of Sophie's smile, of the apartment with heat that barely worked and the shoes that didn't fit, and the constant, grinding terror of not having enough, of working myself to death and still drowning. I thought of Marcus, alive somewhere, spending stolen money while his daughter went without. I thought of the freedom I'd felt last night. Flying through dark skies, my hands on controls that responded perfectly to my touch. I signed my name. Dante smiled. A real smile this time, reaching his eyes. Welcome aboard, Sofia Torres. You start tonight. There's a shipment coming in at 10. Routine pickup and delivery. Consider it your first official flight. Tonight? But Sophie, I've already arranged for Mrs. Chen to stay with her. She'll be paid triple her usual rate. And Sophia? He moved closer, his hand finding my chin, tilting my face up. Get used to irregular hours. This job doesn't follow a 9-to-5 schedule. His thumb traced my lower lip again, that gesture that sent unwanted heat through my body. There's one more thing we need to discuss. Marcus. My stomach tightened. I have people looking, but they've found nothing. He's too careful, too well hidden. Unless... Dante's eyes searched mine. Unless he tries to make contact. Men like Marcus, they have patterns. They can't help themselves. Eventually, they reach out to what they've lost. Try to justify their choices. Try to reconnect. He hasn't contacted me in 3 years. But if he does, when he does, you'll tell me immediately. You'll help me find him. That was part of our deal. And the money? The 300,000? The moment I have him, it's yours. Consider it a finder's fee and justice for what he did to you and Sophie. I should have felt guilty. Sophie's father. The man I'd once loved enough to have a child with. But when I searched my heart, all I found was cold anger. He'd destroyed us. Left us to suffer while he hid like a coward. When he contacts me, I said firmly, I'll tell you everything. Dante's smile turned predatory. Good girl. The weeks that followed blurred together in a strange new rhythm. By day, I was Sophie's mother, taking her to school, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories. Normal, domestic, safe. By night, I was Dante's pilot, flying cargo and passengers to locations I never questioned, landing in fields and rooftops and private airstrips that didn't appear on any map. The work was dangerous, illegal, everything I'd sworn I'd never be part of. But the money was real. Astonishingly, life-changingly real. Within a month, we'd moved to a new apartment. 2 bedrooms, heat that worked. A neighborhood where Sophie could play outside without me constantly watching for danger. I bought her new clothes, enrolled her in ballet classes she'd always wanted, filled our kitchen with food that didn't come from the discount bin, and I flew. God, how I flew. Every night in that helicopter, I felt alive in ways I hadn't since before Marcus left. The controls responded to my touch like extensions of my own body. The sky opened up before me, infinite and free. For those hours between takeoff and landing, I wasn't a struggling single mother or a criminal's employee. I was just a pilot, doing what I was born to do. Dante noticed. He always noticed everything. "You're smiling," he observed one night as we flew back from a delivery, just the two of us in the helicopter. He'd started accompanying me more often, sitting in the co-pilot seat, watching me with those intense dark eyes. I love flying. I'd forgotten how much. Marcus took that from you too. Your certification, your career. He took everything. He did, I agreed. But you gave it back. "I'm a generous man," he said with dark humor. "When people prove their loyalty." Our relationship had shifted over those weeks. The fear had faded, replaced by something more complex. Respect, maybe. Understanding. We'd developed a rhythm. He gave orders. I followed them. We both benefited. Clean. Professional. Except for the moments when his hand lingered too long on my waist, when his eyes tracked me with something beyond professional interest, when the air between us felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. I told myself it was just proximity, just the intimacy of working closely with someone powerful and attractive, nothing more. I was lying to myself. 3 months after I'd signed that contract, everything changed. I was getting Sophie ready for school when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, probably spam, but something made me answer. Sophia. The voice was older, rougher, but unmistakable. "Marcus." My hand tightened on the phone. "Where the hell have you been? I can't talk long. I needed to hear your voice, to know you and Sophie were okay." Rage flooded through me, hot and pure. "Okay? You think we're okay? You left us with nothing, Marcus. Less than nothing. Do you know what the last 3 years have been like?" "I'm sorry." "God, Sophia, I'm so sorry. But I had no choice. They would have killed me. Killed all of us. I had to run. You had to steal $3 million and disappear." Silence. Then, "How do you know about that?" "Because I work for him now, for Dante. The man you stole from. The man who wants you dead." The sound Marcus made was between a laugh and a sob. "Jesus." "Sophia, you have to get away from him. He's dangerous. He'll use you and throw you away like you did?" I cut him off. "At least Dante pays me. At least he doesn't lie about who he is. At least he doesn't abandon his responsibilities. I never wanted to leave you. I loved you. I still don't." My voice was ice. "Don't you dare say you love me. You don't get to say that after what you did." "Sophie, can I talk to her? Just for a minute?" I looked at my daughter, eating cereal at our new kitchen table, her feet swinging happily. She looked safe, content. She didn't need Marcus's poison in her life. "No," I said firmly. "You lost that right. You're dead to us, Marcus. Stay dead." "Sophia, please." My hands were shaking. I hung up, my heart racing. For a moment, I just stood there, processing what had happened. Then I called Dante. He answered on the first ring. "Sophia." "What's wrong?" "Marcus called me, just now." I gave him every detail, the number, what was said, how Marcus had sounded. "You did the right thing calling me." His voice held approval, and something darker. "Forward me that number. Don't answer if he calls again. We'll handle it from here." "Dante? The money, the 300,000, our deal, will be honored. You led me to him, even if indirectly. The money's yours." A pause. "Are you okay?" The question surprised me. I'd expected triumph, celebration that his enemy was finally within reach, not concern for my emotional state. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel different, hearing his voice, but I just felt angry and relieved that I could finally close that door." "Good. Anger is useful. It keeps you sharp." His voice softened. "Take the day off. Spend it with Sophie. I'll handle Marcus." "Will you kill him?" Does it matter? I thought about that. About the man I'd loved, who'd given me Sophie, who'd then destroyed our lives, about justice and revenge and the price of betrayal. No, I said finally. It doesn't matter. He made his choices. Now he lives or dies with the consequences. I'll call you tomorrow, Dante said. We'll discuss your bonus and next steps. He hung up, and I stood in my kitchen, watching Sophie finish her breakfast, completely unaware that her father had just called, that his fate had just been sealed. I felt no guilt, no remorse, just relief. 2 weeks later, Dante called me to his penthouse. When I arrived, he handed me an envelope. It's done, he said simply. Marcus is no longer a problem. I didn't ask what that meant, didn't want details. Just opened the envelope and found a bank statement showing a new account in my name. $300,000, exactly as promised. Thank you, I whispered. No, thank you. He moved closer, his hands framing my face. You proved your loyalty. You chose Sophie's future over misplaced sentiment. You chose us over him. I chose survival, same as always. No, his forehead touched mine, his breath warm against my lips. You chose strength. You chose to stop being a victim. And you chose to trust me with your secrets, your pain, your future. Dante, I know this started as coercion, as necessity, but it's become something else, hasn't it? For both of us. I couldn't deny it. Somewhere between that first terrified helicopter flight and this moment, something had shifted. Dante had become more than my employer. More than the dangerous man who'd pulled me into his world. He'd become my partner, my protector. The person who understood the darkness I now carried and didn't judge me for it. Sophie comes first, I said firmly. Always, that doesn't change. I know. And I respect that. Hell, I admire it. His thumb traced my cheekbone, but she's asleep right now. Mrs. Chen has her for the night, so right now it's just us. Just this. He kissed me. Finally, after months of tension and almost moments. Kissed me like a man who'd been holding back and had finally broken free of his restraints. And I kissed him back. Because I'd stopped being the terrified waitress who spilled wine and stumbled into danger. I'd become someone harder, stronger. Someone who flew through dark skies and made impossible choices and survived in a world that ate the weak. I'd become his, not his possession, his equal. His partner in this dangerous dance we'd begun that night in the restaurant. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante smiled. That real smile that transformed his face and made him look almost human. Stay tonight, he murmured against my lips. Let me show you everything this life can offer. Everything you've earned. I thought of Sophie, safe with Mrs. Chen, of the money in my account that would secure her future, of the helicopter waiting below and the sky that was mine to claim. I thought of Marcus, wherever he was now, facing his own consequences. And I thought of myself, no longer drowning, no longer invisible, no longer alone. Yes, I said. It wasn't surrender. It was choice. For once in my life, I was choosing my own cage, my own chains, my own freedom. And I was choosing him, the man who'd started as my captor and become something infinitely more dangerous and infinitely more real, my partner in darkness, my path to survival, my unexpected salvation, in a world where happy endings didn't exist. But sometimes, just sometimes, you could carve out your own version of happiness from the wreckage of everything you'd lost. I'd flown into his world on borrowed wings, expecting to crash. Instead, I'd learned to soar, and I was never coming down.